Good evening. Thanks very much for joining us on India Business Hour. I'm Shireen Bhan. The headlines that we're tracking for you this evening. Infosys beats estimates in Q1. Revenue accelerates by 2.6%, making it the only large IT company to report a growth in revenue. The company also increases the lower end of its growth guidance by 100 basis points. The US strikes a flurry of trade deals with Japan, Philippines and Indonesia. Japan sees a 15% tariff instead of 25% proposed earlier. The Nikkei rallies to a one-year high. Indonesia and Philippines face a 19% tariff rate. Trade negotiations with China are back on track and is in a good place, says the US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. Also says talks with the European Union are better as the August deadline for higher tariffs looms large. Prime Minister Modi embarks on a two-day visit to the United Kingdom to sign the much-awaited free trade agreement. The deal is expected to bring down costs of British cars and whiskey in India. Indian textile, gems and jewellery will become cheaper in the UK. A delegation of Indian captains led by Sunit Mittal will meet Prime Minister Modi and his British counterpart Keir Starmer. The government initiates discussions to impose a minimum import price on key pharmaceutical products. Sources say the centre wants to protect domestic manufacturers from a surge of cheap Chinese imports. A 29 lakh rupee GST notice to a vegetable vendor in Karnataka sparks a debate. Several small vendors who received notices claim they're being punished for using digital payments. Facing criticism, the Karnataka government blames the central GST regime. Walmart-owned fashion retailer Myntra under the scanner. The Enforcement Directorate accuses the company of violating multi-brand FTA rules prohibiting foreign wholesale firms from directly selling to Indian consumers. Tata Capital eyes a valuation of $20 billion with its IPO and not $11 billion planned earlier. Sources say the company is likely to file papers this week, targeting a public debut in September. No business in Parliament for day 3. Both houses adjourned after opposition protests. Rahul Gandhi raises questions to the government on US President Trump's claims of brokering a ceasefire between India and Pakistan. The Supreme Court agrees to hear a plea by Justice Yashwant Varma in the cash at home case. The CJI recuses himself. Justice Varma's plea alleges a media trial, claims the former CJI Khanna didn't even grant a hearing before recommending removal. Also asks, and I quote, "Where's the half-burnt cash?" More than 100 NGOs warn of mass starvation in Gaza as Israeli bombing continues. Gaza's health ministry says at least 10 people have died of forced starvation in the last 24 hours, taking the death toll from hunger to more than 100. High-end cars with diplomatic number plates, foreign currencies and a posh bungalow in Ghaziabad that serves as the embassies of so-called West Arctica, Saborga, Bolivia and Lodonia. The UP Special Task Force claims to have uncovered a fake embassy scam. Arrests Harshvardhan Jain, the alleged mastermind. Well, that diplomatic scam coming up in just a bit, but let's start with the day's market action. Positive global cues lifting the Lal Street today. The Sensex gained over 500 points and the Nifty moved above 25,200. Mid-caps relatively underperformed the blue chips today. So that's the mid-cap index up 200. The Nifty Bank up by 450, 539 higher on the Sensex and 160 points higher on the Nifty. India's largest commodity derivatives exchange, the MCX, faced a technical glitch earlier today, which brought trading to a halt, albeit briefly. Now, the opening time was initially revised to 10:10 a.m. However, trading did not resume as planned and rates remained static during the halt. According to MCX, the delay in trading was caused by clearing technical processes and file sharing. Brokerage firms like Zerodha informed traders that they can place orders on the NSE commodity segment. The big earnings of the day. IT major Infosys has delivered in Q1 the company's revenue growth in constant currency terms at 2.6%. This also makes Infosys the only large IT company to report growth in revenue. TCS, Wipro, Tech Mahindra and HCL Tech reported a contraction in revenue in the first quarter. Margins in line, and Infosys also increased the lower end of its guidance band by 100 basis points. Rima standing by to take us what worked for Infosys this quarter. Rima.
Indeed, it's a good start to the year for Infosys. Good Q1, dollar revenue growth up 4.5% quarter-on-quarter. In constant currency terms, it was a growth of 2.6%. Big beat versus the 1.5% growth that we were anticipating. And even on a year-on-year basis, the company has clocked in a growth of about 3.8%. As you rightly pointed out, in the large cap IT space, Infosys now is the only IT company to report growth. But bear in mind that this also comes in on the base of last quarter when revenues had fallen 3.5%. So after last quarter's shock, the negative surprise, this time they've managed to reverse and clock in a good quarter. So margins are a clear beat. Revenues are a clear beat. Margins have come in line with estimates at 20.8%, a small drop of 20 basis points on a quarter-on-quarter basis. Profits ahead of estimates are led by the revenue beat. The company for the full year is now guiding for 1 to 3% revenue growth. It perhaps includes the two acquisitions that they have done, and plus the macro environment has not deteriorated in the prior quarter. Operating margins remain in line with estimates at 20 to 22%, no change there. The other positive is the deal wins. The deal wins are up nearly 45% on a quarter-on-quarter basis at $3.8 billion versus $2.6 billion the prior quarter, and 55% of the large deal wins are net new. So all in all, it's a steady and strong quarter for Infosys, meeting the mark on profitability, beating on the revenue front.
The guidance, what we have seen this quarter is a strong performance in terms of where we have delivered the 2.6%, as you pointed out. With that and with the current outlook, where we have seen a lot of the discussions on the economy worldwide having come to more stable situations, but still seeing that it's not fully settled. Given that, we've increased the lower end of our guidance as we go closer into the, progress into the year, closer towards the end of the year.
A strong performance there coming in from Infosys, and the Infosys ADR also opening stronger in the US market. Staying with earnings, Pharma major Dr. Reddy is reporting a mixed set of numbers for Q1. Margins ahead of street estimates, revenue missed the mark, net profit largely in line. On an annual basis, net profit up marginally, revenue up 11%. The company's sales from North America dipped 11% year on year. That's Dr. Reddy's. But the big story this evening, President Trump has announced a flurry of trade agreements with Japan, Indonesia and Philippines after months of turmoil. Now, these deals ease the tensions for some of Asia's largest manufacturing hubs. A deal with India remains stalled for now, and sources have said any deal before the August deadline is unlikely. President Trump announced a deal with Japan that will involve the US imposing a 15% tariff. Now, this is less than the 25% tariff that he had announced earlier. More importantly, automobile imports from Japan will attract a 15% tariff. All other nations face a 25% tariff. This is crucial for Japan, as automobiles account for 30% of all shipments to the United States. Now, Trump has also announced that Japan will invest $550 billion in the US, largely in energy projects. Trump claiming that the US will keep 90% of the profits from these investments, but providing no further details. Now, the US will also reduce tariffs on Indonesia. As per the deal, tariffs will come down from the proposed 32% to 19%. For the Philippines, the cut in tariffs is a minor one. According to the deal announced by Trump, tariffs will be reduced from 20% earlier to 19% now. With this, the US has now signed a framework for trade deals with at least half a dozen countries. A 3-month interim deal with China reduced tariffs to 30%, China imposing a 10% tariff on US goods in return. But this deal expires on the 12th of August, and the US has already hinted at a potential extension. Now, the United Kingdom faces a 10% tariff, and Vietnam faces a 20% tariff. The EU, South Korea and India are the other large trading partners with the US who are yet to strike a deal. The EU faces 30% tariffs from August, India faces 26% tariffs, and South Korea faces 25%. India's peers in the region, like Malaysia, also face a 25% tariff. Bangladesh, Cambodia and Thailand are facing tariff rates higher than 35% from the 1st of August. Now, in a move that could ease the tensions between the world's two largest economies, President Trump has hinted that he could in fact travel on a bilateral state visit to China in the coming days. Here's President Trump.
President Xi has invited me to China, And we'll probably be doing that in the not too distant future, a little bit out, but not too distant. And I've been invited by a lot of people, and we'll make those decisions pretty soon.
Well, that is President Trump. Meanwhile, US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has said that negotiations with China are back on track. Speaking to MSNBC, Bessent said that Washington is only looking to diversify supply chains, not reduce economic reliance on China. He also said that negotiations with the EU have improved. Bessent added that EU's threat of retaliatory tariffs is merely, and I quote, a negotiating tactic. And staying with deals, the Indian government will resume issuing tourist visas to Chinese nationals from the 24th of July after a 5-year pause. The government had suspended all tourist visas to Chinese citizens in 2020 following the Galwan Valley clashes. A Chinese Foreign Affairs Ministry spokesperson called the initiative from India a positive move. China had resumed issuing visas to Indian students and business travelers in 2022. Now, the much-awaited India-UK free trade agreement will be a reality tomorrow. Prime Minister Modi is on his way to the UK, where the deal will be signed. A delegation of India Inc., led by Sunil Mittal, will meet Prime Minister Modi and his British counterpart Keir Starmer. Parikshit standing by now to take us through why this FTA is crucial to bolster ties between India and the UK. Parikshit.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi is on his way to the United Kingdom. He will be meeting Keir Starmer tomorrow. And on the cards is a very important trade deal that will be signed. This will be a victory for both sides, so to say. 99% of the goods traded between India and the UK will have zero duty access from the Indian side. Goods produced by a labour-intensive sector, such as gems and jewellery, such as pharmaceuticals, auto parts, all of them will get preferential access to the UK market. Also textiles, for that matter, garment exports, footwear, furniture. These are sectors which will get good access in the UK market. From the US side, we will see Scotch whisky and automobiles getting access in the Indian market, for autos especially. The tariffs will come down to 10% in a graded manner over 10 years or so. And the tariff reduction for automobiles will specifically be for futuristic vehicles, such as electric vehicles, for that matter. So no immediate worry for the Indian auto sector, because these tariffs are going to come down in a graded manner. Same for Scotch whisky. We will also see relaxation of barriers when it comes to services exports. So the Indian IT industry, the education sector, professional services will also benefit from this. Let's also look at the industry delegation that is going. There is a 16 to 17 member delegation that is going, led by Sunil Bharti Mittal. You'll have Anil Agarwal there, Sudarshan Venu, Chandrajit Banerjee of CII. You also have Ajay Piramal. All of them will be attending the industry delegation meeting of Prime Minister Modi with Keir Starmer.
All right, Parikshit, many thanks for joining us. And you stay tuned to CNBC TV 18. We'll bring you all the latest action on the India-UK FTA, which will be inked by both sides tomorrow. The government has initiated discussions to impose a minimum import price on key pharmaceutical products. Now, we learn that the centre wants to protect domestic manufacturers from a surge of cheap Chinese imports. The proposed step is to provide support to companies investing in domestic production of bulk drugs under the government's current PLI scheme. President Donald Trump has warned foreign pharma suppliers that they will face import restrictions if they do not lower drug prices. Speaking at a White House event overnight, President Trump said that pharma players in the US will face a lot of problems if they don't agree to cut prices. The president also claimed that his administration's policies will lead to a 1,000% fall in drug prices for Americans.
Drug companies were selling drugs, same company, in Europe and other places, based on what Europe told them to sell them at. And they said, let America pick up the difference, and I wouldn't let it happen.
Well, back home, small traders and business owners in Karnataka are on the edge over GST notices, with demands running into lakhs of rupees. The Karnataka GST department recently issued show-cause notices to nearly 13,000 small taxpayers, including street vendors and micro-businesses, for alleged GST evasion. So what was the trigger? State commercial tax officials had found that several businesses used UPI transactions and had crossed the GST registration threshold, but neither were they registered nor were they paying taxes. Vendors who have received such notices are in turn alleging a witch hunt, saying that they've been punished for going digital. From milk booths to vegetable vendors and tea stalls across Bengaluru, they're switching to cash-only payments now due to the fear of GST scrutiny. The issue has now spiraled into a political controversy, with the state Congress government blaming the central GST regime. Karnataka's Chief Minister Siddaramaiah promised to address the concerns of small traders.
जीएसटी ऑफिस वाला बेंगलुरु वाला नोटिस दिया मेरे को, आप 4 साल से इतना बिजनेस किया, 1.5 करोड़ रुपया बिजनेस किया, 1.5 करोड़ रुपया को आप 29 लाख रुपीस टैक्स भराने के लिए बोला। मैं इसलिए ऑफिस जाके जीएसटी ऑफिस जाके पूछेगा, वो बोल रहा हूँ आपको सब्जी व्यापार करते हैं, फल का बिजनेस करते हैं, उसका प्रूव करने के लिए बोला। इसलिए मैं दुकान का लाइसेंस और फूड सर्टिफिकेट और सभी क्या क्या है डॉक्यूमेंट पूरा दिया कराया, तो वेरिफिकेशन करके बोला अभी भी कुछ भी कोई नहीं बोला।
I'm a milk vendor. How can I respond to a GST notice? I sell milk in the morning and then deposit my earnings in the bank. They have sent a notice for 1 crore worth transactions on PhonePe and Paytm. How can I pay this GST? They ask for 18%. They have sent a notice on WhatsApp and through a letter.
In one of its kind crackdown using digital payments data, the Karnataka GST department recently issued show-cause notices to nearly as many as 13,000 small taxpayers, including street vendors and micro businesses, for alleged GST evasion. Sources indicated that the enforcement action is based on a 6-month investigation into UPI transactions from FY22 to FY25. State commercial taxes officials examined the data from apps like PhonePe, Google Pay, Paytm, Bheem, etc., matched it against GST registrations, and they found that several businesses crossed the GST registration threshold, which is 20 lakh rupees per annum for services and 40 lakh rupees per annum for goods, but weren't registered or paying taxes. A move which has been termed as overreaching by experts and industry watchers, including a recent SBI research. The action has sent a wave of negativity amongst street vendors and micro and small entities. Several residents to whom CNBC TV 18 spoke said that the street vendors in Bengaluru are now refusing UPI payments, fearing scrutiny. And even if they haven't received these notices, they are doing this. Officials say that this is part of a larger effort to bring informal businesses into the tax net, but experts warn that it could push many back into cash and erode the trust in digital payments. As of now, other states are closely watching and weighing whether they can replicate this action in their state too. And also, meanwhile, Centre has taken cognizance and they are now exploring what can be done legally to put these notices to rest, something that we'll have to wait and watch for.
Timsy, many thanks. Now, the Enforcement Directorate has accused Walmart-owned fashion retailer Myntra of violating multi-brand FTA rules prohibiting foreign wholesale firms from directly selling to Indian consumers. The ED claimed FEMA violations involving more than 1,650 crore rupees. The probe agency alleged that Myntra and its associated entities carried out multi-brand retail trade activities while falsely claiming to operate as wholesale cash and carry businesses. The ED has said that this structuring allowed Myntra to circumvent restrictions on multi-brand retail trading. Relief for SpiceJet. The Supreme Court has upheld the Delhi High Court order rejecting a plea filed by Kalanthi Maran's Carl Airways seeking 1,300 crore rupees in damages against the airline. The High Court dismissed the plea, citing a case of deliberate and willful concealment of facts. The Bombay High Court has allowed Mumbai International Airport to end its contract with Turkish firm Chelbi. This comes after the High Court set aside its previous interim order restraining the airport from finalising tenders for services after the termination of Chelbi's contract. Remember, Chelbi lost security clearance from the aviation regulator after Operation Sindhu. Tata Capital is seeking a valuation of $18 billion to $20 billion in its planned IPO. Sources tell CNBC TV 18 the company could launch the IPO in the first half of September. The company plans to raise over $2 billion, making it one of India's biggest financial IPOs. It is the end of the road for Good Glamm Group. Company CEO Darpan Sangvi has said that brands under the company will no longer be under a single umbrella. Shilpa joins us now with the details. Shilpa, what does this mean for the employees and the vendors, and what happens to the individual brands that were part of the Good Glamm Group?
Well, Shireen, this effectively marks the dismantling of the House of Brands model for what was once one of India's most celebrated unicorns, the Glamm Group. Now, the CEO, Darpan Sanghvi, he announced on LinkedIn that the lenders will now sell off all the brands individually. Now, this, he says, after, efforts of refinancing, brand sales and strategic investments failed. Now, if you see, cracks had started appearing much before, with the company receiving notices from brand founders that it had earlier acquired, and even employees taking to social media complaining of unpaid salaries and dues. And there were also board exits from key investors. Now, taking responsibility for everything that has happened, Darpan has now pledged 25% of his future post-tax earnings to clear pending employee dues. And he's also said that he aims to place all the staff, both current and former, with incoming buyers of these brands. And for vendors and shareholders, he said that he plans to set up a Glamm restitution fund within the next 60 days, which will be funded by equity from his next ventures to pay back their dues. Now, the crisis, Sanghvi revealed, had earlier began when, a major brand sale fell through late last year. This triggered a crash crunch. Now, since February, the company has been trying to sell off most of its brands. Now, it has so far sold Sirona, which is a female feminine hygiene brand. It sold off Scoop Whoop and Miss Malini. And all of these were at steep discounts to the price that it acquired them in. Now, the remaining brands, which is Glamm, Pop Exo, the Moms Co, etc., are also on the block. Now, while Darpan has promised to be transparent henceforth on what went wrong, this, you have to see, also marks a pivotal moment for the entire House of Brands business model, more commonly known as the Thrasio model, which has clearly failed to take off, not just in India, but globally as well. Back to you.
Yes, certainly many learnings there. Shilpa, many thanks for joining us. Up next on India Business Hour, the UP police claims to have busted a fake embassy in Ghaziabad. That and more when we return. And you can catch all of CNBC TV 18's news and updates on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, X and Jio Hotstar. No business in Parliament for the third straight day. Both houses adjourned after opposition protests as the deadlock continues. Rahul Gandhi raised questions to government on US President Trump's claims of brokering a ceasefire between India and Pakistan. Gandhi also claimed electoral theft in the country by the ruling party.
6 महीने लगे हमने, मगर हमने सारा का सारा मतलब इनका सिस्टम निकाल दिया है. ये कैसे करते हैं, कौन वोट करता है, कहां से वोट होता है, कैसे नए वोटर बनते हैं, पूरा का पूरा हमें मालूम है. चोरी का फॉर्मेट बदल दिया इन्होंने. नहीं, अब इनको समझ आ गई बात. ठीक है. और अब इन्होंने क्या किया है कि अब हम बिहार का पूरा सिस्टम नए तरीके से करेंगे, वोटर डिलीट करेंगे और नए तरीके से वोटर लिस्ट लाएंगे. हिंदुस्तान में इलेक्शन चोरी किए जा रहे हैं.
Well, the Supreme Court has agreed to hear pleas filed by Justice Yashwant Varma in the cash at home case. CJI B.R. Gavai has recused himself from hearing the case. Justice Varma's plea claims that former CJI Khanna did not grant a hearing before recommending his removal. Ashmit is here with more details. Ashmit.
Well, the Supreme Court agreeing to hear what is likely to be a high-octane matter. That's Justice Yashwant Varma's petition. The Supreme Court assuring him that a separate bench will be constituted for hearing his case. Mind you, he made headlines with half-burnt cash being discovered at his home, subsequently making headlines once again more recently with potential impeachment proceedings against him at the hands of the Parliament. Now, in this process of it all, first there was half-burnt cash discovered, then an in-house committee was formed. That committee had findings against him, and then subsequently the former CJI, Justice Khanna, had recommended his removal. This entire process is what is being questioned in this petition. Justice Varma has raised a number of questions as a part of this petition. Number one, he argues that there has been a case of unprecedented disclosure of facts with respect to the fire at his place, which led to a media trial. That's number one. Second, he argues that this media trial has caused irreparable harm to his case, his credentials, his reputation, and that is something that he's looking to bring on board. Number three, he also raises the point that there's been a violation of principles of natural justice. He argues that Justice Khanna, who was then the CJI, did not grant him a hearing before recommending his removal. That, he says, is a violation of principles of natural justice. And finally, raises the big question, all of this is about cash. Where is the cash? How much money are we talking about? And where is exactly the cash now? Who brought it in? Who took it out? Where is the money? That's the question being asked. So all of these questions and issues being raised before the CJI, Justice Gavai, before the Supreme Court. CJI Gavai saying that it will not be appropriate for him to hear the matter, but assuring that a separate bench will be constituted for hearing Justice Yashwant Varma's petition seeking quashing of that in-house committee report against him.
Ashwit, many thanks. Now, truth is stranger than fiction, and this story reinforces the idiom. A posh bungalow in Ghaziabad serves as the embassies of West Arctica, Saborga, Bolivia and Ladonia. Nations that you may not be able to locate on the world map because they do not exist. Now, the UP Special Task Force has nabbed a person who called himself the ambassador of these so-called nations and was running a full-fledged embassy. You cannot make this stuff up. Archana Solanki joins us now. Archana, unbelievable diplomatic story.
Yeah, that's right. Well, it's a wild story that would put any Bollywood blockbuster to shame. A gentleman called Harshvardhan Jain ran a fake embassy of a never-heard-of country and promised people jobs and a brighter future in places like Saborga, Polvia and Ladonia. Polvia, by the way, doesn't exist. It's fictional, just like Hogwarts or Wakanda. Well, according to the Noida unit of the UP Special Task Force, Jain, who has now been arrested, converted a bungalow, a huge bungalow in Ghaziabad's Kavinagar, into an embassy. It was rented. And that embassy was for a country called West Arctica. And he called himself the ambassador of this country and promised people jobs to other micronations like Polvia and Ladonia. He had 4 vehicles with diplomatic number plates, 12 diplomatic passports of these fake countries. He had forged documents with the seal of the Ministry of External Affairs. He had 2 forged PAN cards, 34 seals of different countries and companies. He had fake press cards. He had 44 lakh rupees in cash and foreign currency from multiple other countries. He even used morphed pictures with global leaders like Prime Minister Modi, APJ Abdul Kalam and various heads of state to look more authentic, to influence vulnerable people and project himself as a powerful diplomat. The latest is that an FIR has been registered at the Kavinagar police station and further investigation is underway.
Well, as I said, you cannot make that stuff up, but actually you truly can and possibly even get away with it. But with that, it is time for us to wrap up this real edition of India Business Hour. But before we go, British heavy metal icon Ozzy Osbourne, who was the lead singer of Black Sabbath, died at the age of 76. This comes just weeks after Osbourne reunited with his bandmates and performed at a huge farewell concert for fans. The self-styled Prince of Darkness was considered a pioneer of heavy metal. He was known for his larger-than-life and sometimes controversial on-stage performances. We leave you with this tribute. Thanks very much for watching.